Is there a sports podcast in Detroit that people are talking about?
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
You've downloaded another episode on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
What's up with you, man? So, rolling on 2 hours of sleep?
Yes,
How does
sir.
this work? Do you have like a bad dream? Insomniac? What's going on?
Let me tell you, you keep busy doing a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you obviously would say, okay, maybe you need a vacation. So the first week of July, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to podcast. I'm not going to do anything. Nothing with the practice. I'm just going to enjoy family time, get out and about, go to some pools and have a good time. But
Does this constitute as family time?
Exactly.
Okay.
You know what? This is the first podcast I've done in almost a week, and I feel really good. I've kind of missed it a little bit. So last evening, I'm kind of busy watching the Tigers, hanging out with the family, enjoying the kid's birthday, and I get to bed around 1 o'clock, and that's pretty much the standard nowadays. I get to bed around 1:30, and then usually on good days, I'll get up like 7, 8 or so. But last evening, for some reason, I just got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I probably had a little bit too much soda and just kind of was, maybe thinking about some things or maybe excited to hang out with you to record a podcast.
I'm sure that's what it is.
So I'm tooling around Twitter and I'm up at like 3 o'clock, but I feel pretty good. A couple, glasses of coffee and some Tim Hortons, and I feel ready to go. I'm excited to broadcast with you today.
You're totally going to crash right around 2 o'clock.
You have no doubt about it. And of course, when you go on vacation, what's the ideal thing you want to do is relax.
That's right.
What do? I jam-pack the schedule every day at the pool, doing something with the kids, doing something with the family, catching up with friends, just doing a bunch of things, along with the 4th of July holiday, kind of, seeing everyone doing their fireworks and stuff like that. So, I really need a vacation from the vacation.
I was going to say, you definitely need a vacation from the vacation.
I don't know really how to relax because I could do it. I could sit there on, in the patio for a couple hours and just stare at the wall. But of course, you got sports going on. You got things you want to check into. The whole world's going on. So with the phone and things like that, it's hard to just kind of shut down. So for me, I was looking at it. I'm like, you know what? 2 days at a time for me is pretty good. Because I'm going and working 6 days a week. So maybe just take a weekend, a Saturday and Sunday, and just really do nothing once in a while is really good for me. But it's actually a good segue to talk about something that was just bothering me. And it has to do with the nature of this podcast and what we're doing, right? You realize that if someone were to message us and say, hey, how did you do it? We always reply.
Right.
Okay? So people, I kind of was
like the most interactive Twitter account ever.
Like, I'm shocked, really, that more people just don't say, how the hell did you do this? When people sit here, they go, okay, wow, you guys built a following. How did you do this? People have now started to email and say, hey, could you rate my podcast, listen, or maybe just shoot us a couple messages here and there. Well, something happened over the weekend, and I wanted to message because that was the nature of our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast was if there's a thought that enters my mind, within reason, I'm just going to shoot it out there, okay? So unfortunately, Greg Henson lost his radio gig.
Yes.
Okay, and so, he's out there talking, interacting with all the fans, saying his thank yous to all those people that are going to miss his show and things like that. Well, of course, what do a couple fans of his suggest? Do a podcast. And what is his reply? And it's been his reply for the better part of the last 3 years was, podcast can't feed my family. And so I said, okay, you know what? The first thing that motivated me was something that he wrote back in 2015. Okay, I got a picture of it. It's on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, where he told the reporter, there's no money in podcasting unless you sell it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to prove him wrong. And he was literally the motivation for me to grind and make calls and to see if you could monetize this podcast. Okay, and so I tweeted him out and said, look, I don't really disagree with a lot of things you say, but I totally disagree with the fact that you keep saying that you can't monetize a podcast. You got others that have built a radio career like Drew and Mike. There's a great podcast called The Detroit Cast. They're doing it 5 days a week. And there are podcasts that if they do it and they do it well, look at us, small little operation, family style, you and I, we built something, we just do it regularly, 204 straight podcasts on a Thursday during the holidays, during times where we might have been sick, where we hated each other, didn't want to talk to each other. We still showed up and did a podcast because either we're crazy enough to do it or we love talking about sports, but we are able now to kind of monetize it. And I would believe that if I hadn't started a practice and had 2 other things going on, if I devoted it full time and sat here and made calls and took meetings and did a bunch of other things and put 50 hours a week on the podcast, I think it could be self-sustaining enough to make a little bit of money. Okay, now, I'm not talking about Greg Henson, who has a career in radio.
Right.
Okay, so then I get a couple messages like, oh, that's bad timing. Why would you message him that? And so I messaged Greg and I said, I totally disagree with what you're saying. You can't make money on it if you don't believe it. And you can't make money if you don't do it. So for me, I'm like, you know what? A guy like him, you get let go from your job on a Friday, boom, you should be up podcasting on a Saturday. And if you are in broadcasting, you should be doing it anyway, 5 days a week. If you love this and you're crazy enough to try to give it a go, there is an opportunity if you do a good job. All I'm going to say is this podcast is run by a psychologist and a broadcast professional, okay? And we're not devoting 50 hours a week to it. If we did, I think we'd be more successful than we are.
If we treated this like a full-time job,
yeah,
this would be something totally different.
Exactly.
This is, I don't want to say, it's more than a hobby,
yeah,
but it's not a full-time job.
It's not a full-time.
It's somewhere in the middle.
Exactly. And that's right where we want it to be. And for a guy like Greg Henson to keep saying that, I think it does a disservice to people that do podcasts that are trying, because a guy like him has a backing. He has followers. He's got 10,000 or so Twitter followers. And so I just said, look, I disagree. I said, I don't disagree with, and I was respectful. I didn't say, look, give it a shot or anything. I just said, look, if you don't believe you can do it, then there's no chance. I think a guy like him should do it because it gives the podcasting field a better name. And it's an opportunity for a guy like him to make a couple bucks. Now, obviously going from a job where you're getting paid to nothing, obviously it's going to take time. But all I can say is we weren't original here. All I did was copy Adam Carolla. And his story is simple. He's documented. He says it 1,000 times because, when you do 5 days a week podcasting, you start repeating yourself a little bit. And so you'll hear it. He'll tell you he had a contract. He was fired from his contract. So he was going to get paid another 10 months off the deal that he signed. But he got fired on a Friday, took the weekend off, was like, okay, Monday, he set up a little gig like this in his house and started podcasting. First week, got 1 million downloads because of the name that he drew. And he says, I had a radio following, but he didn't just sit around for 10 months and collect a check.
Right.
And he made no money for 1 year. He made money from his old contract, but he made no money off of his podcast and lost money because he was getting like 300,000 downloads an episode. He's like, what do I do? Back then in 2008, there was higher fees and stuff like that. So he said, look, but I treat it like a business. I got a booking agent. I got a guy that, that was going to work on booking the guests on the podcast. I got a guy that was, looking to monetize the podcast, setting up the meetings with the advertisers so that in a year, he's like, look, here's my numbers. And then within a year, money started coming back. So that's the attitude you got to have. I just don't agree with the attitude that you can't make money at something, especially a guy like Greg Henson would be pretty good at it. And guys like Drew and Mike, guys like, the Detroit Cast, people that are doing really good podcasts out there, if you're successful and you do good work and you're consistent, then there's an opportunity to do well in anything. That's just what we call the free market in America. So I totally am shocked that at least half a dozen people were like, oh my God, why would you message him? He just got laid off. Well, one, he sat across from me, so he realized that we were doing something. And I said, I'm not being disrespectful at any level. I'm just disagreeing with you that and I'm telling you, part of the reason why Vito today is meeting with a sponsor potentially is because of the fact we do good work. We've done consistent podcasts. It doesn't sound like we're still in the basement. We do kind of have a pulse a little bit of what's going on. People do want to come visit us and have some chats. We're not totally blindsiding guests. So you can do it. And so and it's also great too, because the more he does it, the more motivation I have to keep it going and maybe get 6, 4-digit sponsors or so for the network. But it just bugs me so much that there's a podcast out there that's made money, that has a following, that has proven real followers that do stuff that engage an audience. And it just sucks that, somebody would say that when you could just ask. And I would tell you, this is what I did. And if I was Greg, I would have had a podcast every single day this week. And that's just me. And I think he would, even though he'd be our competition, he could make some money doing this. And I'm so mad that it's like I'm fighting and making it like, wow, I got podcast, gets to go cover, do this, gets to get credentials. And then people will just say that when it's not really accurate.
It's that old school mentality and way of thinking. Look, he's from a different era in radio, right? And it's just his perspective on it. If you look at the way a lot of people in radio are doing the things that they're doing right now, everybody's got a podcast.
Exactly.
Whether it be snippets from their show that are just mashed together and they just put it up, or they sit there and they go in a room and they actually hold like a 15 to 30-minute conversation about something totally random off air. They're still putting podcasts up. Everybody's doing. All the big show hosts in the Detroit area are doing this. So he's just, I don't want to say he's a dinosaur, but he's kind of a dinosaur. You know what I'm saying? He's stuck in an older version of radio, and he hasn't caught up with it.
And I agree with them, too, that, of course, within the first week, you're not going to make enough to feed your family. You got to do other things. But if you want it to be your goal, if that's your life mission, if that's something you say, okay, I'm going to build what Adam Carolla called a pirate ship, I'm going to do it all myself, then you got to do it 5 days a week. You can do it. I could do this 5 days a week. I'm almost doing it 5 days a week, 6-7 hours of broadcasting every week.
You really are, because
I'm crazy.
We've already established on everybody's show.
I'm crazy enough to do it. And I think the fact that it is hard to talk by yourself, because I've tried it. It's just really weird, and it's hard.
It becomes difficult.
Yeah. And so you do
got
realize
nobody else to sit there and go off of or anything like that.
And this is really the only show where I try to dominate the conversation. Everyone else, I highlight everybody else and just kind of pick and probe and laugh and do all that.
That's why it's verbal warfare every single Thursday.
Exactly. So I just disagree with Greg Henson in that I do believe there is, an opportunity if you want to monetize a podcast. Do a good one. Take your time, research, and just ask those that are doing it.
That's the thing, man. It's all about quality. It's all about quality. You just got to go do it and put out good work.
It's not original. You know what I mean? I copied the Adam Carolla model. That's why we've been successful. It wasn't like I had a grand scheme, and I just said, you know what? He's the best to ever do it. He's the, Guinness World Record holder in terms of podcasting. So I said, okay, how did he do it? If you looked at our first website, it literally was a spitting image of his, and it got great reviews. Why did it get great reviews from the likes of Mark Wilson and our first initial wave of guests? Because I just copied somebody else, and it was successful. And then we just took it to the, with our personalities in terms of getting guests and having fun and screaming to the high heavens with our Detroit team. So I just totally disagreed with what he said, and I just was shocked that I got a little bit of pushback from people telling me about the timing. It's just weird because, when we started, there was maybe one other one that was doing it. Maybe, if that. We started doing it every single week. We didn't do it every month. We didn't do it once every 5 months. No, we did it every week since September of 2013, and here we are, 204 episodes later, on my vacation, sitting across looking at you.
I feel bad for you. You got to look at this ugly mug.
Yeah. Am I like Daniel Norris? Am I trying too hard? Am I just like crazy? Should be like, look, just take a week off, man. It's okay. You don't have to.
You can be Daniel Norris if you start quoting passages from the Bible and acting like a preacher.
All right, let's start there, man.
It was awful.
It was quite interesting to see a game the way the Tigers played it. The second game versus San Francisco. You would expect when two kind of last place teams play and where the Tigers are at, you would expect them to kind of have that drive and motivation to come out there and kick the ass of the San Francisco Giants, because the Giants suck. They don't look that good.
Like
as
the
a
worst
ball club.
team. They're the worst team in the major leagues right now.
Exactly. And you play a game like you did on Wednesday, at a 7 o'clock game. You should be fired up, I know the crowds aren't going to be super, large because of the holiday week. And plus, I really do believe that Justin Verlander game versus Cleveland really was the needle that popped the balloon of all the fans. And we'll talk about that series in particular. But a couple plays you realize is probably a small indication as to what some of the problems are. A play that happened in the game just really bothered me, and it was highlighted even by Fox Sports Detroit and their Team Tigers. Okay, so it's the third inning. You got runners on base, and it's a situation where, I think it's second and third, and Daniel Norris fields the ball, and he throws it over to first base when everybody knew, like, whoa, it's you're in a tight game. Throw the ball home. And it would lead you to believe that, then they pan over to Matt Shepard, and he's like, nobody spoke. Nobody yelled out 4-4-4 for him to pick up the ball and throw it home, which would have been the proper play, which is a major defensive gaffe in the game of baseball, because everybody talked about it and said, look, people that play minor league ball know that, hey, if there's a runner running home, you got the ball, throw it home. And it leads you to believe, like, what, have they checked out? Why doesn't the ball club know this? Why is it that nobody's talking? That's weird. It's unusual. And then for Fox Sports Detroit to then highlight it and then emphasize it, it's a bad sign. It's a bad look that the fundamentals of the game right now aren't even happening.
That's exactly what the problem is. They've checked out. Look, these guys need to go on to the All-Star break, and they need to get away. That's really what this is. This season's over. They've checked out. I've checked out. I don't know where you're at.
Oh, yeah, I'm watching every game, man.
I've totally checked out.
I can't. I like to watch it because it's an interesting look at kind of the end of an era and what it looks like from the time of, we got to remember now with me, I saw the, over 120 loss team, and they were awful. It was a dead generation. To then the revival, to now kind of putting a bow on it, really without a title, and now kind of circling back to where it's going to kind of fade out again.
What moment would best describe basically this decade of Tiger baseball? Because in my mind, the moment that describes it the best was the David Ortiz home run where Torrey Hunter goes over the wall, and it's feet overhead, and you got the police officer in the background. That was probably the best baseball team we've ever seen. You know what I'm saying? They were stacked head to toe. I think they had, 4 Cy Young pitchers on that roster. It was Verlander. It was
David Price,
Scherzer, and you ended up getting Rick Porcello was on that same roster. So you end up having these guys, and you say you couldn't win it. You couldn't get to the World Series, and that was the thing. It was always really, really good, but just not good enough. And I can't watch these guys anymore. These guys are hard to watch. And look, Daniel Norris, that play right there, like you said, that's Little League Baseball, right? It's a fundamental. You go home with the ball. He isn't engaged mentally in the game. The guys in the dugout, not mentally engaged in the game. The guys on the field, totally not engaged. Everybody needs to be rowing the boat in the same direction, and these guys aren't rowing together.
See, when you ask what's the sentinel moment, I would go with more of a positive. I'm still always going to remember Maglio Ordonez hitting that home run.
It gives me chills, but that doesn't define what this entire decade has been. It was a great moment. That was probably the best moment out of the entire decade.
The issues with the bullpen, obviously well documented, but for me, you got to look at it too, is you got to remember how awful the Tigers were, losing 120 games, and then to turn it around so quickly. Many people didn't think that in 2006 that this team is going to come around and maybe have a run to make it to the World Series. It was crazy. So I think that the call that Dan Dickerson had saying, from all the losses to getting to the World Series was great. And yeah, I guess a couple of the memories that I have from that World Series was all the gaffes defensively whenever St. Louis would hit the ball. And it was like, dude, can the pitchers field the baseball? They get it over to first base. There were so many, defensive gaffes there and some issues offensively.
You made it to 2 World Series and you won 1 game.
Yeah, exactly.
That's absolutely brutal. By the way, Daniel Norris going on the 10-day DL for a groin injury. Blaine Hardy's coming back up, and he's been pretty brutal in Toledo himself.
Yeah, the way we look at it and the way we talk about it is this with the Tigers. It's a situation where the era is coming to an end. And now we're looking at, okay, when is the deconstruction going to happen? Who's going to be the first piece and the first pawn to be traded off? And what made it tough to kind of watch the series versus Cleveland was you now have some momentum. You won a game versus Cleveland. You were playing a little bit better brand of baseball after that horrendous road trip, right? You come home, your fans are into it. You're packing the crowd. They want to see you because you've been on a long road trip, right? And you have an opportunity, you split, in the Saturday doubleheader, which is fine. Then you come to Sunday, which is a day that everybody's looking forward to. You got JV, your guy, making $28 million, the guy that's supposed to be the ace of the staff, that's supposed to end, long losing streaks. And what happens? He goes out there and has a terrible, absolutely awful performance. And you look at it and you go, not only was it awful for the Tigers in terms of their win-loss record, you had scouts from the Cubs. You had scouts from the LA Dodgers looking at you and seeing, okay, what has he got left? I'm certain that report that they came back with was like, oh, Cleveland is not a, crumb bum team. And yeah, JV looks different against them versus other teams, but you got to remember, good hitting teams are going to make him work. It's out there. It's now out there on film. Here's the strategy, what we're going to do. We're going to take a lot of pitches. We're going to force him to just throw and elevate his pitch count, and then we're going to swing at stuff. And a concerning factor and a stat that if you're into the analytics that people are into nowadays is the swing and miss rate. That game was horrible. The numbers all the way down in terms of his swing and miss rate are down.
Dude, he had 3 swing and misses.
First time
3.
First time in a decade where he didn't strike out a single batter. And it kind of felt like that ending as well, that long-lasting stat that he had in terms of striking out batters kind of came to an end, and it really was the needle that popped the balloon because the fans, I think, at that game realized, whoa, we're not in the League of Cleveland. It's a game where you got to nut up and play your best, like a playoff game, like a single one-game playoff. Bring out your best performance. It's not like they lost 3-2. They got their ass handed to them. And it's a situation where I think if you see, based on the crowds this week, yeah, it has to do with the holiday and things like that. But the crowds this week have been pretty bad. And the talk around town is like, okay, let's start remembering the memories. Let's start looking at some of the glory days with these Detroit Tigers. And many people are acknowledging and realizing that it's done. And people are now asking JV on a daily basis, what's it going to look like? Do you want to be traded? What do you think about the rumors with, that are speculating going around that you're going to go to the Cubs and things like that? And so he hears it, and he's human. He's got to realize that, oh boy, I got to make a decision in terms of do I want to be with this club or not, because it's in his, court because he has the no trade clause. So, and then how awkward is that going to be with Alex Avila if his dad comes to him and says, hey, I'm interested in getting some offers, and so maybe he's going to be able to dictate where he goes as well. But right now, the news is, and the rumors that are swirling are that the Cubs and Dodgers are calling, and maybe other teams are going to get into the mix. But the tough part is, I think the reason why Al Avila is trying to float out there that he wants a large haul is I think the offers that are coming back are going to be on the lower end of the prospects because JV isn't that good anymore.
Well, this is the problem. This goes all the way back to the offseason. This goes back when Al Avila basically told
Bad
everybody,
timing,
told everybody, oh, look, we're looking to sell, so give me a call, and we've got guys ready for you. And then he ended up moving nobody because he basically showed his hand. So now what are you going to do come trade deadline time, right? Everybody's going to come to you and be like, well, we know you want to cut salary. We know you want to get rid of guys. So we're not going to give you crap. You can give us that guy, and we'll give you a little something. Let's look at the teams that are possibly in contention for a guy like a Justin Verlander. So you mentioned the Dodgers. They've got wealth beyond belief because of not only the market they're in, but because of their TV contract. The Diamondbacks could make some noise. They could be a player. The Chicago Cubs, again, another team that doesn't mind spending a bunch of money, and they've got a great general manager. They are 3.5 games behind the Brewers right now, and I don't expect the Brewers to be buyers. It's just not in their DNA. It's not how they operate. Houston, they're leading the West right now by 16 games. They could add some pitching, and they've got a mess load of young talent that could come the other way. So that would work out great.
That's a team because, man, look what Houston did. If they want to, really push all their chips to the middle, that'd be a nice squad potentially to have some talks with to get some younger talent. Because when you look at the Cubs, they do have some good talent, some good second basemen that maybe they could trade for, but it just seems like right now, when I think about when Al Avila's taking these calls, I feel like after the weekend, if you had just made the calls 2 weeks ago, they might have been different than after a scout sees him and goes, oh, he got knocked around pretty good.
Also, in the East, you've got Boston, you've got the Yankees. We both know what their payroll's like. Of course, Boston has Dave Dombrowski. Circling back to the Chicago Cubs. Now, this is why this trade has quite a few legs to it and why it could be something very real. All right, the Chicago Cubs are going to need some pitching help after the 2017 season. They're going to be Jake Arrieta is going to be up his contract, and John Lackey both. All right, if you look at what they did last year, like I said, I don't believe that the Brewers are going to be some team that's wheeling and dealing come trade deadline. I think they're going to sit there and they're going to hold steady. It's just the way they've always done things. So if the defending World Series champions believe that they can make a move, they've got no problem parting with pieces. They did it last year when they sat there and they traded away Jed Hoyer, and that was because they thought Aroldis Chapman was going to be their number one stunner, and that's the guy who they went out and they got, and he made a little bit of a difference for that team. They have no problem getting rid of guys, plus they have a backlog of position players, especially in the outfield. You got a guy like a Kyle Schwarber, you got a guy like an Ian Happ, you have a second baseman, Javier Baez. These are all guys that could come back to the Tigers in a trade where Verlander and possibly Alex Avila go, because the Cubs just got rid of their backup catcher because he sat there and called out Arrieta. So they need catching help, and they're going to need some pitching help. And if Theo Epstein sees something, you can sit there and you can work something out. My big issue I have with this trade of Justin Verlander is the money. Okay? I don't think the money should be a factor in this. You need to sit there. You need to replenish your minor league system. You need to get young talent here. You've got to get rid of a lot of overpriced, high-end guys to get that back. So if the Cubs come to you and they say, hey, we want you to pick up 35% of that tab, you should have no problem picking up 35% of that tab as long as you're getting the players in return that you sit there and you deem worthy of it.
Is that the cap, 35% of the number?
I don't know what the cap is.
No, I'm saying, is that the number you would be tolerating? 35% of the number, not even 40,
it's
50?
It's a $70 million contract is what they're looking to pick up. So I
20 to 30 million of it.
Yeah, probably. And that's kind of where I'd be. And I'm cool with that. Just go ahead, sign that check. And now look, you've just freed up a ton of money off your books for the next couple seasons. Yeah, you had to eat a chunk of it, but you freed up a bunch of money off your books for the next couple seasons, and you got young talent. So that young talent comes in and helps infuse your minor league system, and possibly you might have a guy who can make a contribution next season. On top of that, you've got money that you can now go out into free agency and be a little bit smarter and spend a little bit better. Don't go out there and pick up guys like a Jordan Zimmerman. Don't go out there and sign a guy like a Justin Upton to these massive contracts. Go look for a guy like a JD Martinez. That's the kind of guy that you want. You want a diamond in the rough who you can bring and you can basically spit shine that turd and you can turn him beautiful. That's what you want, because then you can sit there and you can sign him to a 5-year deal, keep him kind of on the cheap, and then as he starts to bubble up, you can then maybe extend him out a little bit more, give him a little bit more money.
How much trust do you have in terms of the guy that's going to be making the moves? Because many people are looking at it and going, is Avila going to be on the level of a Dave Dombrowski, Trader Dave at the deadline and picking up a guy like a Michael Fulmer? Yes, Avila was instrumental in bringing a guy like Fulmer here, but it's really different when you're the head guy in charge and you got to be making the calls knowing that the opposing GM is trying to fleece you and they know that you're desperate. And right now, the club, the speculation, the talk regarding the Tigers is they're on the cheap. They're done spending. They're trying to trim the payroll down to maybe $150 million instead of the whopping $200 million that's been kind of hamstringing them for the better part now of the last few seasons. So it makes it really hard because, of course, you and I will speculate. We'll say, yeah, go out and get this guy. But I don't feel like other general managers are going to be starting off offering good stuff, because of the fact that JV's numbers and what we're seeing from him doesn't lead me to believe that, yeah, good. I'm glad JV wants to pitch in the World Series and he wants to pitch in meaningful games. You had a chance to pitch in the most meaningful game on Sunday, and that indicates to me where you're at and stuff like that. And yeah, whether you believe Cleveland knows his stuff or tipping off pitches or whatever the reason is, you needed a quality start that day to win that series. It didn't happen. And I really do believe that it was more than just a loss. I really do believe that it hurts, whenever a guy like Justin Verlander goes out and has an awful performance because teams are watching. They want to know what they're going to get. And and in the end, if it's a team like Houston, you never know if he's just going to be like, you know what? I don't want to leave. And he can, at any moment, he can say, no, I'm going to veto that trade. And I would be fascinated to see how the fans would react if a trade is kind of proposed and he vetoes it. Are they going to be supportive because he has the right to do it? Or are they going to say, look, dude, we're going to turn on you and we're no longer going to support you and continue to view you as the savior guy that we've kind of loved and revered for the last 10 years. So it's going to be interesting. But do you think Avila sitting in that chair is going to take the calls properly and get, when the time comes, the proper haul for a guy like Justin Verlander? Or is it going to be maybe a situation where some desperation hits in and we're forced to take on some guys that are maybes?
I'm nervous with Avila at the helm, and I've already kind of covered his offseason foibles, and that has spilt over into this season. So I feel the best way I can sit there and kind of describe my feeling to you is I feel like you have an adult who would be the other general manager, and you've got a 2-year-old, and the 2-year-old wants a set of dum-dum lollipops that you have in your hand. You've got 3 of them, and I don't know, cherry, watermelon, and grape, right? The kid's favorite. And Avila's the 2-year-old, and he really wants those dum-dum lollipops, and he's got $2 in his hand. Mind you, you can go buy a bag of 75 dum-dum lollipops for $2. So the kid, you sit there, you talk to the kid, and you haggle with him. You give him 3 dum-dum lollipops, and he's going to give you the $2. Now you can go buy 75 more, and this dumb kid's got 3 lollipops. That's how I feel Avila is going to end up doing all of this. And it just, look, he's not Trader Dave, obviously, because Dave Dombrowski wouldn't have came out and showed his hand right away in the offseason like Avila did. I don't have the confidence that Avila is going to be able to put this team in the best position going forward, and that makes me really nervous. The big issue is you can't come to Al and you can't say, hey, we don't trust you to make these trades, so we're going to have you sit back. We're going to have somebody else do it. Because if that's the case, just go ahead and fire him. Go ahead, fire him, and get somebody else in here. Whoever it is that you trust, get them in here. And I don't know if this team has a requisite list of general managers that they want, or guys who they're sitting there deeming worthy to be able to pull off these trades. And right now, this is probably the most important time for this team in the last 15 years. Because basically everybody's out there. It's a cornucopia of talent for you to sit there and wheel and deal with. And you know what we got to get back? We got to save money, and we got to get young talent that's going to produce. That's the only requisites that are out there. So go ahead and do what you got to do. Everybody's on the fucking block except for Michael Fulmer.
Exactly. We could have that discussion. I think we've had it before. But in terms of Daniel Norris, real fast, 4 times as many people think that, look, just let him, work out his kinks at the major league level than, on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, then thought that he should go down to the minors.
No, he's got to go with the Toledo tweak, man. That's what he's got to do.
Don't you think
so? Yeah, the Toledo tune-up. Send him down.
Oh,
look, it worked for Scherzer, right? It worked for Sanchez. Here's an idea. Why don't we bring the Toledo pitching coach up and let him work his magic with all these guys? An idea.
Yeah, it seems different, though, in terms of the philosophy, though, because some people would argue that, look, when you go down to the minors, the hitters aren't as good, so yeah, you can work on tweaking things and things like that, but there's no experience like going up there and going through this situation, especially really when in the end, everybody knows they're really not competitive anymore, and I think the white flag has been raised, and everybody's looking like, okay, what are we going to do with the pieces that we have? And so I guess our supporters feel like, hey, let's let them learn right here, Comerica Park, on the road. Let him learn and let him work it out here. And he's got stuff, and it's going to be a question of, can he work on the mental side of the game, and can he, when things don't go his way, really rebound and have better performances. It's really crazy that a guy like that with that much talent, and we're talking about a mental status.
The big issue is he sits there and he's just so inconsistent. Like, he'll be inconsistent in between innings. You know what I'm saying? Like, he'll go out there and he'll mow guys down, and then he'll come back the next inning and you're like, wait, what just happened? Is this the same guy? And then he'll go back out there in 2 innings and he'll be right back to where he was mowing guys down. It's too much inconsistency, whether it be arm slot, arm angle, or whether, just like you said, it's a mental hiccup. And you've seen this even with Justin Verlander. Justin Verlander was going perfect the other day, and then somebody lays a bunt down and then the wheels fall off. Pitchers are fragile creatures. You can't sit there, you can't shake them, you can't rock them. And if you do, sometimes they fall apart. So he's just got to get more mentally tough. I say send him down to Toledo, let him work on a few things, and then you can bring it back up, and hopefully it works out.
Well, we'll get a chance to see now, too, how the Tigers respond to a loss versus San Francisco. They play a 1 o'clock game later on today. I'm fascinated to see because of that awesome pitching matchup. You're going to pay your hard-earned $20 to go down and see Sanchez versus Cueto. I mean, I bet you they don't really pan too much into the crowd, because if it's a nice weather day and people are back to work, getting into the swing of things, a 1 o'clock game on a Thursday ahead of a series versus Cleveland, Sanchez versus Cueto, and then I'm curious to see what Brett Ausmus is going to do with his lineup. If it's another Romain Matuk kind of day and he's resting guys, you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to not spend my $15 and just keep it in my pocket and just say, you know what? No way. You went on a bad day, man. You took out. What made you decide to go to Comerica Park that day?
I had a buddy who had a day off of work, and he was like, "Hey, let's go down."
Who was it? Who were they facing?
It was Kansas City, and that was one of those games where Kansas City. Yes, it was Daniel Norris was pitching.
Yeah,
it was his last start, and just got his stuff pushed in. Man, it was brutal.
And for me, I got to go see him pitch where they gave him like 13 runs of support, so it's a little bit different vibe. He was pitching and everything was cool, and that was probably the last most complete game that they played, where they destroyed, I forget who they were playing, but they destroyed the opponent, and it was an awesome, awesome performance. So, hey, the Tigers, like you said, I think it's time now. More people are going to reminisce than speculate about the future of the team. We're all sitting back and waiting. When's the time going to come? Is it going to be over this All-Star break? When's the time going to come when Avila lets it out that, hey, we've traded a piece, and who's it going to be?
How long do you expect? Because look, it's already been said and done. They're going to be traders. They're going to be sellers. How long after how long after they're sellers do you believe that they'll sit there and they'll be back in contention and they'll be challenging for a division, not even for a World Series, but challenging for the AL Central?
Yeah, the majority of people that followed us said 3 years, and I'm kind of in the same boat.
At least 3 years.
2 seasons that are going to be horrible, and then you get back, and the guys down your pitching staff will have more experience. Fulmer will be in his prime. Norris, Boyd, maybe, or maybe others that you get in this collection. Maybe the youngster that they just signed, Faedo, will be up to the par at 21 years old, and maybe he can do some things. But everything right now, speculation and hope. But with the Tigers, the era has come to an end. It was a nice run of 10 years. I wouldn't trade it because the Tigers were horrible back in the early 2000s, and to get what we had from 2006 now till 2016, hey, we'll take it. In the end, when you look at it and sum it all up, it didn't produce a championship, which sucks. It kind of puts a damper on it. But from where they were, if they started over and they do it correctly and they get all their ducks in a row, there's a chance to kind of get back, because the Central isn't that great year to year. You can kind of rise up. I mean, back in the early part of this decade, you won 4 straight AL Central. So you can do it. It's just you can't be stuck in purgatory. When you commit to selling, everybody's got to be on the block. And maybe the most pivotal decision that might be made might involve Justin Upton. Does he decide to opt out, which would save some money and allow for some flexibility in terms of the payroll salary and things like that? So it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of weeks, because everybody's waiting. They're sitting on their hands going, okay, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, it's, Avila's got to make some moves. He's got to be diligent in what he does, and he can't screw this up. If he screws this up, it's going to set the organization back at least 10 years, and we'll lose an entire generation of baseball again. I think me and you were on that cusp of that generation where they were just absolutely brutal. I liked watching baseball, so I would just turn it on and watch it as a kid, but they were absolutely atrocious. There was no reason to tune in when Bobby Higginson was your best player.
Oh, my God, Bobby Higginson. All right, let's take our first time out. We'll come back, and we'll play a round of Jock Jams, and then we'll finish with the Doc and Jock Pro-Wrestling Report. Stay with us. Doc here. I want to tell you about our host site, Podomatic. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a place to host our uploaded and recorded audio, and the place that we found was Podomatic. We've had a great working relationship with our host site. Whenever we record a podcast, we just upload it to our host site, Podomatic.com, and then quickly we can get links. We can have our fans and supporters listen to our product, and we've been lucky to have a great working relationship with the host site. If you're looking to start a brand new podcast, a brand new project, and you're looking for a place, we highly recommend Podomatic.com. Because do you remember when July 1st would roll around and everyone would get excited, kind of like Christmas for sports fans? Everyone would be excited and it'd be like, okay, who are the Pistons going to get? Who are the Wings going to sign? And it just kind of seems like with the era right now in Detroit sports, it's just kind of been like a dud, you know what I mean? With the team struggling, and everyone's talking about it and everyone's kind of saying it. When the Lions are your beacon of hope and the Lions are the team that you're saying, that's the team in Detroit that's going to carry the torch for the sports fans, you're like,
that's the Banner Squad, bro.
Oh, shit. We're in trouble, right?
It's bad. It's bad. The Detroit landscape's awful.
They ruined Christmas.
They did.
You know what I mean? It's like Gordon Hayward's going here, and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry are signing here, and we're going to talk about it next in Jock Jams. But it feels like Christmas is done here. There's no Christmas anymore.
Look, when you're the Red Wings, all right, and you go out and you sign a guy like was it Trevor Daley, right?
Ooh.
Oh, exactly. Who? What? Okay, cool. He's like 34 and he's always hurt. Big deal. And then you get some other guy who might play, might not play.
What's going on?
Luke Witkowski? Okay, good job. And then if you're the Pistons, tell me if you had the same reaction when the Pistons sat there and they went out and they made their big free agent signing. Were you like, who's this guy and what's he do? And did you have to like Google him? Because I had to Google and Wikipedia him to find out who the hell he was because I had no idea. Good old Langston Galloway, according to SI, that might be a sneaky signing, but I have no idea who this guy was. And I'm sure the majority of the people who are listening to this had no idea who that guy was. Exactly. That was my reaction. When it came across my phone, I was like, who?
Exactly. All right, let's get into it. This is what we call Jock Jams. I got a lot of great questions lined up for you. Holiday edition, I want to get a sense of where the Jock's head's at and what we call Jock Jams. So speaking of free agency, what are your thoughts on the recent NBA free agency frenzy where the owners are just burning cash? And you and I were talking about it, and we're like, dude, guys that are averaging 8 points are getting like $30 million over 3 years. What are your thoughts? Because it leads me to believe there might be an issue in a couple years.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm more concerned about the sanctity of the league going forward. I have no problem with these guys making the money that they're making. All right? No issues there. All right? If you perform well enough, you can go get the money, go get the money. The big problem I have is these owners are spending so much on these players. Every year it goes up and up and up and up. And at some point, it's got to reach its ceiling. So are we going to head down another lockout? Are we going to have another shortened season because there's going to be all kinds of debating on whether or not we can get a CBA done that's going to sit there and be palpable for the owners and palpable for the players? I mean, when you look and Steph Curry is now your richest player out there, bringing in over $40 million a season. And look, I like Steph. I think Steph's outstanding. I think he is part of the reason that Golden State is where they're at, and I think he is the butter churn that makes that butter get whipped around. Okay, he is an important cog in what goes on in Golden State. All right, he doesn't show up in the playoffs though. He dries up in the playoffs like the desert. And when you've got the MVP of the playoffs sitting there taking less money and sitting there taking $26.5 million to sit there and stay in Golden State, and Steph's making 40, it just seems like there's a huge disparity there. And look, I applaud Kevin Durant for what he did. I think it's great that you're able to do that you're able to sit there and suck it up and take less. But when one guy is making heads and tails, almost double what you're making, and he hardly performed like you performed in the playoffs, that makes me raise my eyebrows, and I just kind of question that a little bit. And then, like, moving this forward, I understand that they've got $99 million. That's what the salary cap is set at. The NBA is set at $99 million. I know that most teams carry 13 guys on the roster, so you've got to somehow spend at least, I think it's $80 to $89 million is what the minimum is. So you got to give money away. I get it. I understand that. But you got to make sure you're giving it to these guys who are worth it, because, look, like you said, you score 6 buckets in the NBA, all of a sudden you're a $20 million player? That doesn't make any sense to me. That's like blasphemy, you know? I mean, I'm concerned going forward because I just think the league is headed down a really dark path where we're going to end up with another lockout. And it's just going to become another big issue that's going to be long drawn out, and you're going to have players on one side and you're going to have owners on the other, and they're going to be sitting there fighting over dumb stuff. And it's just like, get your money in order, get everything situated and set. And I just don't think there's a necessary reason for a guy to be making $40 million, especially a guy like Steph. Like, I think he's good, but he wasn't the playoff MVP. And when they won their championship a couple years ago, he wasn't the playoff MVP then either. So what makes him so deserving of all this money? Just because the guy can sit there and jack up three-pointers from all over the court? Okay, cool, I get it. And yeah, okay, cool, he's the one who sits there and makes that offense run, but I just don't know if he's worth that contract, and I don't know if there's going to be some buyer's remorse going forward.
In relation to NBA free agency, what was your thoughts on the Pistons? And so far, kind of crickets regarding KCP. No one's made him an offer yet. Everyone's kind of sitting back going, is he going to get a max deal? Are the Pistons going to be forced to, try and re-sign him? Or is nobody even going to come calling and everyone's going to look to sign a bunch of other players? In terms of the Pistons, what was your reaction to the signing of Galloway and where they're at with NBA free agency as it relates to KCP?
So when Langston Galloway was signed, like I said, I was like, who? Who's this guy? I had to go Google him, I had to look. And upon some further research, this might have been a really good signing. I don't know if I really like the dollar amount. Look, he's going to be a backup guard on this team. The guy can hit the three-point shot. For his career, he shot almost 40%. So he's going to be able to sit there and jack up the ball for you. And he's going to be able to move it. And he's going to get you a couple assists, and he's going to help set some things up. I think this might have been a security blanket type signing, because if things go sideways with Reggie Jackson, you've got Langston Galloway that hopefully can ascend to that position and sit there and take over the point guard spot and help run it for this team. So I think it was a little bit of a sneaky pick, a little sneaky signing there. I would have liked to have seen them do something else, maybe make a little bit more of a splash. In regards to KCP, I don't know if he's gonna get his max deal. I think a lot of other teams see the holes in his game, and I think his one major strength is he plays defense. He's a very good defender. He's a guy who can go out there and he can usually lock down your best guard night in, night out. But he's streaky when he shoots. So I don't know if he's going to get a max deal. And like I said, look, owners got to give money away because they've got to hit the basement of whatever the salary cap is. But I don't know if he's going to sit there and be able to get that or fetch that. And then if you're the Pistons, do you come back and do you match that? I don't know if that's a good idea. He is your best defender that you have, whether it be on or off the ball. But I don't know if that's a smart play going forward. I don't think so. As much as I like KCP and as important as he is, he's just not reliable on the offensive side. And if you're going to spend that kind of money, you got to be able to put the ball in the basket.
Now, looking at the Red Wings at the same time, they made some signings, and I think you talked about it, and you said, really? Trevor Daley, guys that are basically role players in their 30s. It is kind of looking like Kenny Holland's having a really tough time recruiting young guys in their prime to come here and do some things, and you kind of look at it and you go, well, okay, there's two sides of looking at it. You could say, well, he's getting guys that are going to continue to kind of maybe help the club or maybe not. The team is going to struggle. So in essence, maybe they are starting the process of tanking by just going out there and getting a respectable club, but that likely is not going to make the postseason. Or you look at it and you go, is Kenny Holland trying to execute a plan that's in his head that he thinks a guy like Trevor Daley is going to come in here and have some impact? You know, a guy like a role player that can come in here and help out, or does he really think that this is what is really needed? So where do you stand on it in terms of what you've seen with the additions that the Wings have made?
So Trevor Daley's a left-handed shot, which the Detroit Red Wings covet a left-handed defenseman. He can help move the puck. The issue with Trevor Daley is he's often injured. All right, 2015-2016 season when he played for Chicago, played 29 games. When he played for Pittsburgh in 2015-2016, played 53 games. Last season, he played 56 games, and he had a really low point total, only 19 points. On top of that, he's 34. He's an older guy. The issue I have with what Ken Holland has done, with him going out and signing a player like this, is one, he's not reliable because he's not healthy. Two, he's not going to sit there and he's not going to put points on the board. Three, he's taking a spot of a younger guy. All right? I think we all realize that this team needs to be in full rebuild. I think the only one who doesn't realize it is Ken Holland. Team needs to be restructured from the ground up, needs to be reworked. You're bringing in these veterans who are just taking up spots for younger guys who can sit there and be learning and could be playing. And look, I agree. I think what they got going on in the AHL over there in Grand Rapids is outstanding. They got one of the best systems in all of hockey. And usually they say, like, I'm a little bit more ripe than bringing them up way too early. And that's fine and that's good. But you know what? You're not in that position anymore. You're not winning Stanley Cups. You're not challenging for Stanley Cups. You're not even sitting there challenging for the playoffs right now. So bring up the young kids. Let the young kids play. You don't need to go out there. You don't need to sign 34-year-old veterans who can't even stay on the ice because they're often hurt and they don't score enough. You don't need to do that. I think Ken Holland is trapped somewhere between his augmented reality and bizarro world where he thinks all of this is okay. It's not. Don't be surprised if Ken Holland's out after this season. He gets to sit there and enjoy the new Little Caesars Arena one good year and then pack your shit up and get out. That's how I see this ending.
Nice round of Jock Jams coming in strong. Yeah, again, it just kind of seems like with Detroit and with their lack of ability to draw free agents, we're really stuck relying on the Detroit Lions to kind of come in and do some things because, again, it kind of stinks to kind of put it that way, but Detroit really isn't a free agent destination across the landscape, and many people are looking at it and going, you know what? You got to build through the draft. All across the sporting landscape, you got to build through the draft, but the teams are consistently drafting like 10th through 20th. They're not drafting top 5, and look what happened with the Lions. What has kicked off this era of success for them? Drafting first and second for the better part of a decade, and they hit on one potentially with Matthew Stafford.
Speaking of Matthew Stafford, I wanted to get your opinions. What do you think he's going to sign for? Because his contract's coming up. They've already started negotiations. You've seen what David Carr got paid out in Oakland, so that's going to have an impact. What are you thinking Matt Stafford's going to sign for? Early estimate.
Early estimate, I'm thinking it's going to be in the neighborhood of like, what, $126 million? A little bit more than Derek Carr. But I wonder if a sticking point, because, you know, there's been some talk regarding, you know, guys like Sammy Watkins are coming out and saying, look, we're seeing what's going on in the NBA.
Oh, dude, I don't want to hear Sammy. You know what I want from Sammy Watkins? I want Sammy Watkins to stay healthy and actually produce. That guy's got no room to talk.
Right, but
that guy's always on the IR.
So now you've kind of
killing fantasy teams.
You've seen the market.
Shut up, Sammy.
You've seen the market being set by Derek Carr and things like that. I wonder if the sticking point with Stafford is, does he want to be the guy? Because if you want to be a trendsetter and help the league, what can Matthew Stafford tell his agent? Look, I want my deal, whatever it is. I don't want 80 of it to be guaranteed. I don't want 80 million guaranteed. I want it all guaranteed. So if he wants to be the trendsetter, because people are talking
less then?
No. What I'm saying is potentially what he could do is say, look, I want to be the guy that's going to help the entire league. And so if my contract is going to be for, let's say, 8 years, $125 million, or 9 years, $127 million, I want the entire lot. I want the whole thing guaranteed. And then if you cut me, great, I get the whole amount of money.
So this is interesting, okay? I didn't think you were going to go this route, okay? So if you're Matt Stafford,
I'd try it.
Okay, you would sign a 5-year, $100 million deal.
All of it guaranteed.
So that means you're making $20 million a season. That's a lot less than what you could potentially be earning, but it's all guaranteed.
You could try.
Would you do that?
I would say no. I want the biggest number.
Look,
as much as I can get.
At this point, Matt Stafford's in line to make possibly $29 million a season.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what he could basically command. I don't know if he'll get that. I think David Carr signed for somewhere near 26 a season. If you're Matt Stafford, do you come to the table and say, what? We'll say what? What's 140? We'll say 145 divided by 6. So you come to the table and you say you want a $145 million contract. It breaks down to 24 and change over the next 6 years. You want all that guaranteed.
All that guaranteed. You could try.
So you would take a little bit less,
but
you wouldn't be the highest paid quarterback.
But if
you take a little bit, but it's all guaranteed.
If it's all guaranteed, I would consider it because that way.
See, I didn't even think about that.
Because
that's
now,
a great
because
thought,
it's
dude.
not because people are talking about it like, why are NBA contracts different? It's not collectively bargained. It's just the way it is in the NFL.
Just how it is.
It's how it is.
It gives the organization the power to sit there and save money if you're not producing on your contract.
Yep. So if Stafford wants to be a trendsetter and help the league, he says, look, either or, I take a big money deal and all of it's guaranteed. Or what's holding it up is he's just waiting to see like the finer points in terms of
But if you're
length.
the NFLPA, do you allow that to happen? Because you have to remember.
It's great. Then if it's,
you would think, but the NFLPA is always out in front of everything, pushing for these bigger contracts because they got to get as much money for these players as possible. The contracts always have to be huge. I think a guaranteed contract is much better overall for the players. Because whether you get cut, you get hurt, anything, you're guaranteed all that money. It puts ownership in a little bit of a bind, but I think it's best for the players. So now, if you're the NFLPA, are you like, look, Matt, that's probably not the best idea because you're not driving the number up, and we'd like to see the number going up exponentially. When in reality, it's probably the best long-term play you could make. So, what side of this is the NFLPA on? That's the real question here. Because if I was on the NFLPA, I would say guaranteed all day. Take a little bit less, get what you can get,
but all of it be guaranteed.
But all of it guaranteed. Because in the end, that's what's best for the players. That's what's best for business, except for the owners.
No doubt about it. So it'll be interesting to see.
Wow, it's interesting. That's a great talk. We should sit there and we should discuss this a little bit further as when NFL season gets going.
No doubt about it, because people are looking at it and going, "Wow, man! All these guys now. If Steph Curry breaks his thumb or starts becoming nefarious and whatever, he gets all that money guaranteed, no matter what." And football players are like, "Dude, why is our contract set up like this when every other sport, whatever they sign for, they get?" But, these athletes in the NFL, they get a big chunk up front with signing bonuses, but I think they do want their fair share of the pie. And when the numbers are always released regarding the NFL and how much money is being brought in, I think it's fair for them to kind of look at it. And if Matthew Stafford is going to be the trendsetter, I don't know. I feel like he's not really that kind of guy, but, he could try it, and he would be the guy, because if you're going to be a trendsetter, you got to be the top quarterback in a situation where he's got the ultimate leverage. So I wouldn't even consider taking less. I would take all of it, and I want all of it guaranteed. I want $30 million a year, $29 million a year, 10 years. I want it all, and just push the number forward. And then it's going to take a quarterback or a running back that's in a great leverage situation to really pull a move like that to help the players out.
Look, if you're Matthew Stafford, you're 29 years old, right? And I love where your head's at with this.
Guaranteed.
This is so awesome. I'm just great. This is great that you brought this up. If you're Matt Stafford, if I'm Matt Stafford, I'm 29 years old. I sign a 5-year deal. I say, look, 5 years, $100 million, guaranteed. All of it guaranteed. So now that means at 34, I can come back and I can demand another pay raise. Okay, and that one can be all guaranteed too. On top of it, you're leaving money on the table for everybody else. So you can sit there and you can have this organization built around you, so you can go out there and you can win that one championship that we've never had. You can go out there, you can win that, and when you do win that and you turn 34, you come back and you say, you know what? Pay me again.
Exactly.
Dude, I like where your head's at. If I'm Matt Stafford, I'm on that train all day long.
Before we get to the Doc and Jock Pro Wrestling Report, I just want to say a quick word regarding our supporters and our sponsors. Adam and I couldn't have the great success that we've had and being able to perform podcasts and recruit other people and have more shows than just us without the help of our supporters and our sponsors. And the way you support them is just visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Our supporters like, the Breaking Down the Ring podcast, Arthur Palick and his boxing organization. You have a lot of great sponsors that help us, and it really makes it really fun to come in here, turn the lights on when you have, help like from those at the Detroit Sports Commission, Fanatic U. Top Cat Sales has been really great with us. Every organization that we've worked with has been unbelievable. And in the coming weeks, we're going to roll out some new sponsors, and it's going to be great. So, it's great to build relationships and things like that. But in order to continue this train rolling, you got to help those that support us as well. The way you do that is you go to our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com, click through the supporters banner, click through the sponsors, click through and see who is helping independent broadcasting, and that's how this works. Thank you for those that have been supporting, and now if you're hearing this for the first time, check it out. And if you're interested in supporting us, hit us up on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, or email, follow along on our website and go to the spot that's directed, and you'll get some information regarding sponsoring or supporting one of the premier podcast networks in the area. Thank you so much for your kind support. Definitely check out DetroitSportsPodcast.com. So it seems like based upon, the rundown here and what we've been talking about, I think you were kind of supportive of the wrestling shows this week. It was a little bit better than in weeks past, but if I were to have a critique, I thought it was very promo heavy, the shows on Raw and SmackDown. I thought that to open SmackDown with John Cena, to have another long promo, to open Raw with, while the quality was out of this world, I just feel like you don't have to go 17 minutes on a promo. Well, you can get effective promos in 10 minutes.
You can, and I think that's what they did on Raw. I don't think Raw's was 20 minutes. Normally it's a 20-minute promo.
It was a little shorter.
Came out, cut out, I think it was about 12 minutes. You got the start of the next match, then it went to commercial right away. Mm-hmm. But look, the John Cena-Rusev one, that was long. That was long, and John Cena milked that for all it was worth. And you got to see a pro in action. I love John Cena. I pop like a little girl.
Yeah.
Whenever John Cena comes out, I get so excited. All right, but that guy milked it for all it was worth, and he did what he did. He's a vet, dude. That guy is an absolute pro. I wish he wrestled better in the ring because he would be the complete package. Right now, he's the best thing they got going. But look, yeah. So you want to start with Raw, and we'll just kind of work chronologically through all this?
Go ahead.
All right, so let's start with Raw. So Enzo comes out. He cuts another outstanding promo, gives Cass another catchphrase. He'd call him a casshole. So, look, I thought Enzo's promo was outstanding. That guy goes out there, rips it up for about 10 minutes, slams the mic down, jumps out of the ring, jumps back in the ring, rips his shirt open. He's got Thug Life basically tattooed across his belly, and I think he wrote it in with a black Sharpie too, which is even better. And he's sitting there talking about referencing Tupac. I thought it was great. And he gets back on the mic, and he forces them to turn his mic back on, and he sits there and he cuts another 3-minute promo. I thought it was great, man. There is some real emotion here. You've not seen this out of Enzo in forever. And the worst part is they're going to feed him to Cass, and Cass is going to crush him. And that's going to be the worst part. Enzo needs to go in there. He needs to beat up Cass, and then Big Show's got to come down and save Enzo. That's kind of what's got to happen here, right? Is this how you're seeing this play out on the pay-per-view that's coming up this Sunday?
I feel like what they did on Monday was a way to elevate, Enzo.
I thought it was great. He got the first blow on him.
Exactly. That's what you got to do. And so what you got to do is you got to execute a match similar to what Bret Hart and Steve Austin did, is that a guy can lose, but he can get his ass whooped and still come back for more. So you give him 15 minutes, you let Cass dominate, but Enzo doesn't give up. And so both guys walk away getting over. But yeah, Cass has to come over, no doubt about it.
Right. Well, Cass has to win, right? Because you've just built him up. He's going to get the rocket attached to his butt, and he's going to get shot to the moon.
Yes.
Do you put him in a match with Enzo, and do you have him beat Enzo to where Enzo's unconscious? Is that what you do?
Yes, probably.
Is that what you do? That way Enzo comes out looking strong because he never gave up, and he was able to take an ass whipping, and Cass still gets the W.
No doubt about it.
Okay. So then next highlight was Miz ends up beating Heath Slater, and through this whole entire thing, he ends up splitting his pants.
That was great.
Which was great.
I was like, seriously, you can't have guys wrestle in suits and things like that. It was funny to watch, and I was like, okay, Adam's going to definitely chime in on this. It looked funny all the way around. He's got a huge
He owned it.
He owned it. It looked cool, right? It was pretty cool.
So here's the thing. Whenever guys wear white pants to the ring, I'm always nervous because I'm reminded that John Cena was once very, very sick and he pooped himself live on TV. And we recently had an MMA fight where an MMA fighter, she pooped herself all over the ring. So I'm always nervous when and I think it was Vince McMahon also pooped himself live on air because he had a shart. And it comes through on the white pants. So I'm always nervous when you see these guys out there wearing these white pants. And again, you shouldn't be wrestling in a suit. That should not happen ever. But Miz ends up ripping his pants, beating Heath Slater, and he just owned it. I thought it was great. I thought it was funny. I liked how he owned it. He didn't care. You know what I'm saying? Like if I was Miz, I'd have ripped those things off and I just sat there and wrestled in my skivvies and called it a day.
Do you like what they've done with the Miz-tourage and elevating guys like Bo Dallas and
I do.
Curtis Axel? I think they look better, much better gimmick than what they were doing at least.
Look, I mean, those guys would just go out there, they'd get beat up, and I couldn't stand any more of this Bo leaving Bo. I was done with it. I like Bo's new look. I like his beard. I like his slick back hair. I like it. You give these guys, look, they're not main eventers, right? But you give them a little bit of the spotlight, and you help elevate their career a little bit, and you make them shine. And I like that. I think that's good. And then we had another great Joe Lesnar heated promo. This felt so real. Like, look, we both know wrestling's scripted, but this felt so real. Like, these guys were sitting there arguing back and forth, talking over each other, and then Joe just goes berserk. Like, I could feel like, because I've been in Joe's spot where I've been sitting there arguing with somebody, probably you, and where I'm just going back and forth, and it's just like, you're not hearing me, no matter how loud I talk, and the louder I talk, the less you hear me, so now I'm just going to get pissed off, and now I'm just going to come find you. And I just want to punch you in the face. I never actually punch you in the face, but I want to punch you in the face. And I felt like that's what this conversation was. I loved it. They're doing such a good job with this. This can't be a one-off thing. Can it? Can this be a one-off thing? This has to go more.
It has to go more, I think, yeah.
Does Joe win the belt here or no? Because I think Lesnar's winning the belt, but I want to see it again.
Either way you go with it, I think both guys come away very well because it's going to take a beating to put Samoa Joe down. Another situation where he can lose and still be elevated because of the fact they've given him that respect. And by putting him in a program with Brock Lesnar, you're now giving him that respect that he can actually do it. So you don't really even have to give him the belt. But if you want to shoot him to the moon, I mean, the guy's put in the time. He's earned the opportunity to carry it. And if you want to have the Universal Intergalactic Champion, as you call it. If you want him to be featured on television, which I think you should, more than once every 3 months, then you put it on Samoa Joe, and you can, offshoot a lot of different angles because, like you and I like to say, Brock Lesnar doesn't need a belt. It's nice every once in a while to put it on him if you kind of have other angles that you want to focus on. But I do think on a weekly television show, you should have the Universal Champion kind of be featured on it.
I agree.
It would look good on Samoa Joe. And I think it's time that Brock Lesnar does the business. And if you're going to take time off, but it all depends on if Brock Lesnar is going to up his work rate and work a lot more from now until the Royal Rumble, then you keep the belt on him. But if not, I have no problem giving it to Samoa Joe. He's well deserving. He's earned that credibility. It's just, I would just say, work on his punches and continue to let him do the promos, man. He's doing a good job.
He does an outstanding job. He's one of the most complete wrestlers they've got on Raw right now. Any other highlights that you liked? Anything that you can remember off the top of your head here?
I liked the Finn Balor match. I thought it was very high quality. I like.
Do you feel like they're booking him poorly though?
No,
look,
I like
he's gonna end up taking on
slowly. Look, you got to have situations where a guy like Finn Balor, everyone knows he's already made, kind of. Mm-hmm. So you just can't. For some people, you just can't make him a main eventer right away. He was at that time. Unfortunately, based upon his injury, they kind of have slowed him down. But there is some value in kind of building him up and having good matches versus Cesaro or having good matches versus other people that can elevate him and feature him a little bit. It's okay. I know as wrestling fans, we want the gratification right away. They kind of did that, okay? But unfortunately, he got hurt. And that's part of the narrative. You have to acknowledge it in that, okay, you know what? Right now, if he hadn't got hurt, he probably would have had a 4-month run like AJ Styles, but he got hurt. So now you say, okay, because he got hurt, we can slow him down and maybe build up to SummerSlam or build up to the Survivor Series and re-elevate him because the dude's only 34. So you got to remember, these guys' careers, if he wants to grind he'll be around for the next 10 years. And so you don't want to burn a guy out and shoot him to the moon, because you might have a situation similar to The Miz, where you put him, it wasn't fast, you put him in WrestleMania, and he really kind of didn't belong. And when you look at some of the WrestleManias that are rated in their main events, you go, The Miz kind of took 5 years to get back to main event status after they put him in a main event of WrestleMania. And they kind of, embarrassed him a little bit by having an influence by, I think The Rock came in and was a referee in one of his matches and kind of overshadowed what he did in that matchup. So you want to take it slow with a character, and there's no rush. I just think he's a guy right now that you can enjoy his entrance, enjoy his work, and everything so far. I know we want him to be a superstar right away, but there's also some value in a slow grind. It's okay.
I feel like the way they're booking him right now, you have him wrestling Elias Sampson. And I like Elias Sampson. I think he has some value. But I feel like you're booking more for Elias Sampson than you are for Finn Balor. And I think heads and toes, Finn Balor is the moneymaker here, right? He's the guy. And there's no reason that he shouldn't be thought of as one of the top 5 in the Raw brand and in the company, for that matter. So at some point I see a heel turn coming for Finn Balor. I don't necessarily agree with the way they're booking him. I don't like it. I think his match with Cesaro is good, and I think that's both because they're both good wrestlers. At some point, though, I think he's going to turn heel, and I think he helps re-elevate the club and brings Carl and Anderson back up a little bit here. I wouldn't even mind seeing them end up pairing with AJ Styles, and you get your own Bullet Club
or all
going.
all four of them. Why
Yeah.
not have them just tear through for a year if you want to go in 2018? Around the time, I think in a year or two, they're going to start negotiating a new television deal. So you're going to want some news and some ratings. If you want to have all 4 show up on Raw, that would be sweet, and have them take over the entire division. That would be pretty sweet.
I think it would be awesome, and you just have them just crushing dudes.
Anything bum you out about Raw, or just kind of stunk it up for you? The one thing, though, overall across both shows to talk about is the use of the commercials. I don't like where some matches, they keep the match off to the left and they have the 2 squares and they let
That's
you see
on
the match.
SmackDown,
Yeah, and I don't like that at all. I feel like there's some situations where you have a couple commercials in the same matches. I just feel like, I'm starting to see something that's really cool. Maybe the WWE can take a little bit of that. I was watching, I think it was Fox Sports 1, and what they did was, the guys were talking, and all of a sudden the screen shrunk a little bit, and a little sponsor showed up on the side for like 20 seconds, and then they just brought the screen back to full. I really feel like with wrestling, I know you want to get commercial spots in. If you're going to do it early, but just have a couple more situations where the sponsor logo shows up, in different spots where you just shrink the screen a little bit, have a little thing on the side where we can see the company, and then bring it back out. There's too many commercials, and it breaks up a flow where there are some situations where you want to see an entrance, and I don't want to see some of the women just show up into the ring. I want to see the entrances. I think the presentation of a show should always be both the entrance and their entrances should be shown, and at least the start of the match should be shown. I don't like it where they break off into commercial before the match starts, and then they come back, and the match is already like halfway through. It's kind of stupid.
So this past weekend, I watched the first day of G1, the New Japan series, and I'll give you my thoughts on that later on. But something interesting they did, it was essentially commercial-free through the matches. You had a commercial before the match, and you had a commercial after the match, but during the match, it was they didn't break away from the action, and I thought that worked out really well, almost like how they do in MMA. You know how when you're watching like MMA on Fox or whatever, it's usually you have your fight and they don't go to a break until after the fight. It was the same thing. So you got that whole thing. I think you're right. I think it breaks it up, and a lot of times what happens is some of these wrestlers, the only good redeeming quality about them is their entrance, or it's part of their package is their entrance. So they'll sit there and they'll go to a commercial break. Then you come back, you're like, oh, how'd that person end up in the ring? Wait, what? And that was the one person you wanted to see come out because that's the best part of their whole gimmick is their entrance. So I agree with you. I think something needs to be done.
Across both shows, what they did was they allowed some of the mid-card guys to kind of show up there where Braun Strowman faced Apollo Crews. And so that was good for him to kind of have a good showing. Of course, you have to have Braun Strowman show up. I like the way they've returned him and utilized him to hype up the pay-per-view. And it was, I think, for a show to hype up a pay-per-view, the Raw show was pretty good.
This was their best go-home show in probably the last 6 months.
You got it.
Probably since, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, probably the best go. And even those weren't that good.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's probably the best go-home show for a pay-per-view called Great Balls of Fire.
Now you go over to SmackDown, and it was a quality show. I thought it was pretty good. The one segment that I guess, again, to go into a bigger theme, is for dudes, I don't need to see dudes singing, rapping, and introducing musical elements. I know you want to.
That's all he has.
I know.
It's awful.
I know Aiden English doesn't have a whole heck of a lot, but then you had another segment where you had a rap-off, and I thought overall,
I thought the rap-off was great.
It was great. They allowed some R-rated stuff to show up there in terms of talking about, some of the New Day's X-rated exploits. I thought that was pretty cool.
The stuff with Paige,
they were talking.
Xavier Woods. Oh my God, that was fire, bro. They talked about
fire.
Rikishi.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, dude, it was great.
It was pretty good, but for me, I just Aiden English singing, rapping. It's just for me. I want to see some wrestling, and so I know you got to break up the mix though. But AJ Styles, the match that he had, who was it with? One of the members of American Alpha. I don't think it was Jason Jordan, the other guy.
No, it was Gable.
Yeah.
Chad Gable.
Elevated Gable flawlessly
yes.
because of the fact that they had a good match. You could have maybe given him a little bit more because of the quality of the matchup, more time in the ring. I thought the match was unbelievable, and the quick. I don't know if you noticed it. You got to kind of pay attention to the subtle nature. When the match was done, AJ shoots Gable a look like, I didn't expect to have this kind of match with you, and it kind of gives him a little bit of rub off of the
raised his arm at the end.
Exactly,
yep.
Gives you a little.
Right.
You elevate a young guy. That's how you do it, and you still have AJ Styles win the match. You have him go on and win the Battle Royal. All is good. I think the part that I guess was a little bit concerning was it kind of felt like deja vu from last week, where you had a couple matchups that were already on last week that you just replayed. Again, Lana taking on the champion again, but that ended, and you kind of now introduced Tamina a little bit. So
she stumbled getting in the ring.
Yeah,
she's brutal.
I know.
You're putting somebody who's really whack at their job with somebody who's trying to learn their job.
Tamina and Lana.
That's great.
It'll go nowhere, but it's really cool what they've done in terms of kind of just changing it up. Okay, you're done with Lana. She's not going to be in the title picture anymore. She's got to be trained by a Tamina.
Oh, by Tamina. Okay, great.
Right?
So you can fumble lines and be horrible at everything else you do.
And then the whole Randy Orton segment again was just like a repeat of last week.
It
you
was.
have Randy Orton fight Aiden English. You interrupt him and his stupid singing, and then Jinder Mahal comes out after Randy Orton crushes another jobber. And I'm like, you could have like Jinder Mahal visit Randy Orton backstage, or do a vignette where Jinder Mahal, does something personal, or shows up at Randy Orton's house, or does something outside of just standing up there and going. Although I love when he does the modern day Maharaja, he's delivering it more and more forceful every week. But Rusev, I know it's July 4th.
We didn't get any gender music today. What's going on here? Are you slacking on your DJing skills?
No, that wasn't that the bumper that I played. That was the bumper that I played coming into the first break.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I see you were paying.
I don't remember.
It's all good. But Rusev,
I'm running off 2 hours of sleep. Not you.
Rusev and Jinder Mahal going with the America hates me because of my skin color is whack. I know it's the 4th of July. It's the easy way to go.
This is what they can do more. They can. But this is what Vince loves. Vince loves this. He loves his anti-hero to be somebody who's so opposed to the U.S. Look, when in the 80s, it was Ivan Koloff, right? And it was everything with the USSR. And you had Hulk Hogan, who was, the real American hero. So that's what he does, man. He goes back to the same playbook all the time. I thought Rusev cut a great promo with John Cena. I thought those two guys are outstanding at what they do. I think they're great. I feel bad for Rusev because I feel like he could do so much more. And if they just didn't take that, give him that sheet of paper and were like, here, read this word for word.
Yeah, exactly.
And he'd be so much better. But
do you like having Baron Corbin attack Shinsuke?
No. I hate. I don't need to see Baron Corbin. I wish Baron Corbin would go back to NXT.
Nothing like that?
No,
okay.
I don't need that. I mean, what I want to see is Shinsuke out there beating somebody up. I don't care who it is. I don't want to see him against Dolph. I'm tired of that. But I need him to go out there. I need him to compete for something with somebody of worth and credibility. I don't like Baron Corbin. I think he's whack. And look, I like Dolph, but Dolph needs to go the whole Cody Rhodes style and just go do the indies, make your money on the indies, reinvent yourself there, and maybe WWE will pull you back and elevate you, because they tried elevating you and they did a bad job, and then Vince pulled your push and crushed you.
All right. Before we get out of here, give me the news and notes regarding TNA Impact and the news, I guess, that they made now becoming a new organization. And then I definitely saw it. There was a lot of buzz regarding New Japan.
Okay, so TNA, or Impact Wrestling, back when they sat there and they came back for their live tapings a couple months ago.
Is that where D'Angelo almost broke his neck and quit?
Yes.
One match, D'Angelo?
Yes,
Okay.
he landed.
I saw
on
the
his face.
GIF and that's it.
That was Slammiversary. So at Slammiversary, which happened this past Sunday, TNA/Impact announced that they are now GFW, Global Force Wrestling, which was Jeff Jarrett's wrestling program after he left TNA. And basically what it was, he was basically trying to sell you gold bars. It was really shady the way it worked out. But anyways, so now their GFW presents Impact Wrestling is what it is. It's really complicated, convoluted. TNA, Impact, GFW, whatever it is you want to call it, they're working on doing live shows, kind of how Monday Night Raw is, where they go around and they do their live things, they do live house shows.
More money, they need some ticket sales.
That's basically what it is. So going forward, Jeff Jarrett wants to go head to head with Raw, or he wants to go. I don't know if he wants to go head to head, but he wants it to be a live show. He wants it to be a live broadcast. He doesn't want to do the tape delays anymore. So Slammiversary just happened. We've had a whole bunch of unification titles where your old TNA titles are now GFW titles, and your GFW titles are now whatever TNAs were. So it's going to be complicated. You got to watch this Thursday to see what's going to happen. Alberto El Patron, a.k.a. Alberto Del Rio, is now the GFW heavyweight champion. Paige wore a luchador mask and sat front row, so I'm pretty sure WWE is pissed off about that, and they're not going to be very happy. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Paige going forward with WWE, because she's had a couple wellness violations. She's been pretty outspoken about a lot of different things, including her health. Alberto Del Rio, El Patron, whatever you want to refer to him as, has been extremely outspoken about WWE and absolutely hates Triple H. So it's going to be weird how this is going to play out and work out in her favor. On top of it, she had her sex tape, but they didn't penalize her for that because everybody on the rosters had a sex tape leaked, so whatever. And then getting us to New Japan in the G1. I only watched the first day because Access TV broadcasted only the first day. G1 was outstanding, what I seen. It was a 4-hour special on day one. Day two, they're going to air this Friday on Access TV. I'm going to watch that, and I'll give you a little heads up on what happened there. I do know results from that. Kenny Omega won day two and is now the new New Japan IWGP United States champion. It's a pretty sweet belt. I thought the action was great. If you like New Japan wrestling, if you like wrestling that looks like the wrestling you kind of grew up with, New Japan's where it's at, man. It's awesome. It had a huge, big feel to it. It was awesome. It was like a small indie stadium, but it felt so much grander than that. It was great. The big issue I had with it was Jim Ross. And Jim Ross sounds like a guy at this point where it's just kind of passed him by. He fumbled guys' names, calling Marty Scurll Marty Scurll. Got Zack Sabre Jr. mixed up with Will Ospreay.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Didn't know Jay Lethal's finishing move.
Oh, no.
And this is this guy's predominant finishing move. It's a lethal injection. You need to know this.
Yeah.
And then we had the Cody Rhodes, Okada, Kenny Omega saga. That's been going on. That's a huge storyline that has been weaved through everything that New Japan has done. Okay? So Cody Rhodes was taking on Okada, and Kenny Omega comes down with a white towel, ready to throw the towel in. He's over there talking to Brandy Rhodes, and he's like, you got to throw the towel in. Look, he's getting his ass beat. He's not going to survive this. You need to throw it in. And this is something that Cody Rhodes did to Kenny Omega a couple weeks ago in the Dominion final. So this is going on, and Jim Ross just glosses over it. Doesn't anybody, like, for a lot of people, this is their first experience to what New Japan is. You need to fill them in on this backstory. Like, I know it because I'm a total nerd and I geek out about this stuff. You need to fill people in on this. He just kind of glosses over it. He's like, oh, Kenny Omega just kind of came down here, and that's what Cody Rhodes did to him a couple weeks ago at our last big pay-per-view event. And that was kind of it. And Josh Barnett's a total boner. Okay. Like, you want to talk about a bone job. That guy just basically, he's just giving the rope to JR. Like, go ahead, hang yourself. I'll just watch. Because he's not helping him out at all. But other than that, I thought the action was incredible. First night, Kenny Omega had probably the match of the evening. He took on, Michael Elgin. And that dude, they had a great fight. Absolutely great fight. A couple other good matches in there. Do you know that Billy Gunn's still wrestling?
Is he really?
He is.
Not
and
now.
he looks jacked. Like,
he's ripped up now, huh?
He's
Good.
still in really good shape. His timing's a little bit off in the ring, but the guy still looks pretty good. So he ended up taking on Naito in night 2. So it was great. G1 represented for sure.
Okay, before we get out of here, we definitely have, it just came out, we do have a Kurt Angle You Suck award, probably for a man that probably needs some mental help. And when I heard the news on the wire, I was like, what? What's going on here? And we'll give him the award right now. Rob Kardashian's got to put down his phone.
Dude.
I was like, listen, dude. Listen, I don't care. There is,
I was wondering where this was going.
Jay-Z wrote a song, 99 Problems. Rob Kardashian blew up the internet on Wednesday, got his Instagram account shut down. If you haven't heard it, just Google Robert Kardashian, Black China. And to end the podcast, dude, seriously, guys don't act like that. And I was talking to Andrea at night last night, and I was telling her, I'm like, look, the Kardashian women have used all their, issues and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar situation. And Rob has taken all the drama and flipped it the other way and it's become mentally ill. And I don't know if it's all for attention seeking to do this, but to go back and forth at the very least, whatever, whether you felt like you were trapped, whether you feel like you got into this relationship
What's
all
the whole
wrong.
backstory?
Okay, the situation is
I don't know. I seen some stuff. I seen a post that he posted where he was like, my mom was trying to give me advice, but I'm not trying to listen to her because she married a guy named Caitlyn.
Yeah. So he's got a tumultuous relationship with Black China. There's involvement where
Is she a porn star? What is she? Or
she was a former stripper.
Okay.
Now she's an entrepreneur turned entrepreneur.
Okay.
So
basically, I'll suck you off on the side for money.
So the quick backstory is she was dating Tyga. Then Tyga dropped her to date Rob's sister. So many people feel like, well, to kind of get back at his sister, she tried to maybe trap Rob. So Rob
with
got
a baby and all that?
Exactly.
Oh, no.
That's what people are. That's the conspiracy theory behind all this, is that she's trying to really mess up the family by trapping Rob to get back at Kylie for taking her baby daddy, Tyga. So that's kind of the overall conspiracy theory.
I love how you know all of this.
I was looking. So on Wednesday, they have a tumultuous relationship where they've broken up. The relationship where your buddy's dating the girl that's bad for him, and they keep breaking up. But many people think it's for attention. But yesterday on Instagram, he went off and was just like posting nude shots of her and posting naked pictures of his baby mama.
Does she look good?
I'm not going to really comment on a mother, but let's just say if you're into thicker women, she's okay, But my focus is on Rob Kardashian and that he's black. He sent a video. He was like, "Oh, I got blocked on Instagram," so then he started ranting on Twitter and started saying, "Look, she sent me this video and she's kissing up on another dude," and he's like spewing how much money he spent on her like in the last 6 months, which was like $350K.
What?
$100K to fix her body after the baby, $250K on jewelry, and then he's like, I spent all this money.
Gym membership, girl. Yeah. Go work out.
He's like, I'm spending all this money, and you're bringing home all these guys that you're banging in my bed that I pay for at my home. And yeah, go to his Twitter page. It might still be there, where he's ranting and raving about the mother of his child. And at the very least, I look at it and I go, look, dude, guys don't handle their problems like this. Stay away from social media. If it's for attention, it's the worst kind of attention. It makes you, your family look bad. It makes her look really bad.
They all look bad. They're all a bunch of
It's
dummies,
bad,
dude.
But I just feel like guys don't handle it that way via social media and their platform. And it's really sad because you really sense a little bit, if it's for hype or not, the guy is mentally ill in a lot of ways. And to keep doing it like this.
Shit, wouldn't you be?
I would have taken the money and ran. I would have been like, look, if you want to view me as my sister's lackey boys, just give me the $6 million a year to show up on the reality show, and I'll just be the depressed guy in the corner. But you're making $6 million a year to show your face on TV. You don't need to be really embarrassing yourself further on social media. I don't handle myself like that, not in terms of my life. My problems are my problems like everybody else's. But I wouldn't disrespect the mother of my kid, even if she did trap me. I tell Andrea all the time, sure, you want to leave me, you get the house, I'll just, take an apartment. It's not a problem. I'm okay with that. I'll pay as long as, can I get a couple conjugal visits every couple months? We cool? We don't have to be enemies, So it doesn't roll
Can
like that.
I get a handy with lotion underneath the table?
Exactly,
Is that cool?
Exactly. Are we cool with that? Okay, cool. We So Rob Kardashian, dude, seriously, you got to look it up, dude. What he did, it was,
I like how you know the entire story, though. That's great.
Dude, I watched, guilty pleasure. I watched The Housewives, and my wife really is into the Kardashians. The last 2 years, I faded out. It got really boring. But I watched the first 300 episodes of the Kardashians. You know, she's Armenian, and I saw the sex tape, and I was impressed. I was hooked. I'm like, she's talented.
This guy.
Let's get out of here.
Oh, my goodness.
Another great podcast, 204 in the books. Next week will be the 205 live. It'll be, like I said, much more regular. Get it out probably by midnight of Thursday. Today was the holiday edition. We hope you enjoyed it. Adam and I always have a good time. Sir, thank you for the 90 minutes. I really enjoyed it.
Outstanding. Go Avila. Don't screw it up.
Don't screw it up. Go Tigers, baby.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I have voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.